our...
Mila, my final question is whether or not... Welcome back again. As I've mentioned earlier in my introduction that 2 years have been marked since the International Day for Human Fraternity, marking the occasion, of course, where President Abdel Fattah el-Sisi called upon the world to spread culture of peace and tolerance upon the world, also the values of tolerance and peaceful coexistence. Now, meanwhile, Sheikh of Al-Azhar Grand, Dr. Al-Tayyib and Pope Francis have signed a human fraternity document in this regard. Now, to know more about this document, and this is specific month, why it's very special, because we're recalling back this very important document and the President's continuous call for values and for peace along the world. We're very much delighted to have joining us over the telephone Her Excellency Ambassador Moushira Al-Khattab, prominent diplomat, former Minister of Family and Population. Thank you for joining us, Your Excellency.
Thank you for having me.
Your Excellency, now on February 4th of 2019, that was when this document was signed between Al-Azhar and the Pope. And to know more about the fraternity document, what can you tell me?
I want to tell you that as the world celebrates the International Day of Peace, it is worthwhile to embrace the document on human fraternity and insist on its implementation. I think it's a huge step forward when Sheikh Ahmed al-Tayyib, the Grand Imam of Al-Azhar al-Sharif, and Pope Francis of the Vatican have signed this document, which I see as parallel to the Universal Declaration of Human Rights. This document really, if implemented, will mark a leapfrog in the implementation, protection, respect of human rights of everybody, Muslims, Christians, non-believers, everybody. The document is very progressive. It adopts a human rights approach. And what I like about this document is that it starts in the name of God, who has created all human beings equal in rights, duties, and dignity. So discrimination is not justified any longer. And we're very proud that our Constitution of 2014 reiterates this in Article 53. So when we embrace this document and implement the letter and spirit of it, it calls upon all of us to live together as brothers and sisters, to fill the earth and make known the values of goodness, love, and peace. So we can no longer exclude others. We can no longer snob the vulnerable and most marginalized. The document also starts in the name of human life,
Yes.
that God has cherished and instructed us to cherish. No excuse for killing anyone. It also says that no religion incites hatred. So I think that this document is implemented. First of all, its adoption is a huge step forward to the global humanity. And for us Muslims, it's even more. And that's why Pope Francis sent a message to the Grand Imam, Dr. Ahmed al-Tayyib, congratulating him on his courage to sign such a document.
Yes.
If we look at the rights of the marginalized, it says that they are right holders, equal in dignity. If we look at the rights of women, the same applies. So with this document, you can no longer discriminate against women in the name of religion. We know that some countries put reservations on CEDAW, the Convention on the Elimination of All Forms of Discrimination Against Women. And they made reservations on the article stipulating for non-discrimination. So I think we should all embrace this document, translate it into legislation, teach it to our children at school, how we respect others, we put our hands together for the goodness of humanity. This is very important. And the document focuses on implementation. It calls upon ourselves. It starts by ourselves. Artists, writers, religious leaders. It calls upon every one of us to implement this document. And to raise awareness of the document, it calls upon artists, religious leaders, and awareness is crucial for the implementation.
Your Excellency, Ambassador Moushira, the world is definitely paying a price for the injustice, disrespect, intolerance, and unpeacefulness that has been very much direly spreading around the world recently on various levels, and specifically I'm talking about the extremism or extremist ideologies and the terrorism phenomena. How can, through this document and through these good people who are working very hard with the rest of the world to overcome that, do you think that the price that has been paid so far can actually be repaid through that?
I thank you very much for your comment, for your question, because it's exactly this situation which instigated the drafting, signature, and celebration of this document. It's humanity is paying a hefty price for extremism, intolerance. We also have epidemics, we have degradation of the environment, and we have seen unprecedented waves of people on the move, be it internally displaced, asylum seekers, refugees, or migrants who find it very difficult to integrate in the society. And this document specifies such categories and calls upon the implementation of the rights.
Yes. Your Excellency, in the Western world, there's a very thin line between freedom of speech and freedom in general and speech of hatred. And we've seen that on a number of occasions. But again, it's those scholars and those religious figures from all the holy religions that it's their role to be able to identify this very thin line to people, and specifically I'm talking about the younger generations, that there's a huge difference between freedom and between speech of hatred. How can that be diminished by time to remove the grudges?
Exactly. This is a very, how can I say, it's a very serious problem. And countries hosting people on the move with the different categories that I have mentioned are under legal obligation to fulfill their human rights. And now this obligation is, well established by human rights conventions. And now with this document, human fraternity document, that has been signed and embraced by the top religious leaders, Sheikh Ahmed al-Tayyib and Pope Francis, no excuse for excluding, snubbing, belittling, or any such unacceptable behavior towards people who are trying to make a decent life away from their place of origin. And actually, with this document, I am sure that populist movements, very right-centric movements, that are either motivated by politics or by religion. On the other hand, we have to look at home also. Some Muslims abroad are being, they refuse to be part of the fabric of the society that has adopted or embraced them. So there is now a universal obligation to ensure that every human being enjoys his or her rights without any discrimination, be it on the basis of residence, ability, geographic location, ethnic background. It is not acceptable to discriminate against people so long as they are law-abiding.
Now, Your Excellency,
and I expect that soon we will see this human fraternity document implemented in practical steps led by Al-Azhar and the Vatican. And I'm really looking forward to that day, because we will be able to really enjoy global peace.
yes, Your Excellency, on one of the challenges possibly that will always remain is the fact that there needs to be a separation, isolation between the political interests and the political clashes of interests and the name, or speaking under the name of religion, because the notion of peace in the three religions, the three holy religions, is the same. But if you want to look at how it's been implemented on the political world and life today, they view it differently. So when are we going to be able to overcome this challenge and obstacle of isolating political reasons from the notion of peace, and having create this realization to the individuals on a human level for the true notion of peace?
I fully agree with you. There is a lot of politicization, and some countries who label themselves as democratic, they make undemocratic gestures or pass legislation which truly discriminates against vulnerable groups. And I have mentioned, most importantly now is the group of people on the move, because we have never seen such a huge wave of people on the move. So they claim to be democratic countries, and they pass laws by their parliaments. And when the law is passed by the parliament, you can't say anything about it. So the only way to fight this is through raising awareness of human rights, starting by young children, going up all the way, going through professionals in charge of the implementation of the law, and political decision makers, parliamentarians, the judiciary. But the most important is that people on the move, that their different categories, must respect the laws of their newly adopted society, or the society that is hosting them. I don't expect someone to obstruct the traffic and have a Salat al-Jama'ah in the middle of the road to pray.
Exactly.
You have places for prayers. And I don't expect someone to humiliate his wife or his girl child, and then when he's questioned by the law enforcement, he says, "This is my daughter and I'm free to prevent her from going to school." You cannot do that. There are intrinsic human rights that the global community at large has accepted. So they have become obligatory. You cannot prevent a child from going to school because education is a human right. And we have seen some groups of people on the move, refugees, asylum seekers, internally displaced people who discriminate against, they're coming from countries where tradition discriminates against females, and they think that they can do the same discriminatory attitude in these democratic countries. No, they can't.
Yes.
So it's an obligation on both sides.
Your Excellency, now, as you speak, it also wants me to ask you, from a personal experience, what other entities and institutions do you think should come along together and work with this, the people who have worked on this document to make it at a larger scale? I'm telling you here specifically about the use of the internet and technology and how the new generation are very proactive towards it. And there's again a very thin line between information and ignorance, and you can't necessarily be informed but informed accurately with using your logic. So when you're speaking of cultural perspectives, which are also part of this dilemma, what other institutions that you would like, or entities, to join in and work hard to spread on a larger scale and reach each and every citizen on all levels?
Well, thank you very much for making this point, because now the world is a global village. Thanks to ITC, the Information Technology and Communication Revolution. So the right to knowledge, there is a thin line between the right to knowledge and manipulation of someone through the internet. And we've seen now that the internet has become a space for human trafficking, especially children, and for radicalization of the youth. And these are activities that are punishable by law. This is spreading hate speech, promoting exclusion and violence. So states are obliged to make sure that service providers, companies providing the internet, they observe the law, they observe the ethics. And there is a role and a responsibility that parents have to undertake. Be connected with their children. Don't let the gap widen between them and their children. They have to see and observe what their children are doing. And there is a wide host of stakeholders that should put their hands together. The family, the teacher, places of worship, the private sector, the judiciary, the legislation, the executive. It is, you know, this document is cognizant of all these elements. It's beautifully drafted. That it starts by the human rights, and that we're all equal in human rights. And then it focuses on the implementation and calls upon people who are supposed to implement. And it starts by ourselves. Everyone is responsible. And then it moves on to dissemination of this, and it addresses the artists, the innovators, the scientists, the religious leaders.
Absolutely.
So it is a very comprehensive, very well drafted, human rights-based document that I am so proud as a Muslim to see our Grand Sheikh Al-Azhar a signatory to this document. And it really ushers in a new horizon. But we have to take it seriously, and we have to implement it. It's not enough to admire it, but we have to have the courage of implementation.
Absolutely, you're absolutely right. Your Excellency Ambassador Moushira Al-Khattab, a prominent diplomat and former Minister of Population and Family, thank you very much for joining us on Cairo Local Time. Now, unfortunately, our time is up, and that brings us to the end of our episode on Cairo Local Time. I'm Yasmin Bekir signing off. Thank you for watching.